some point in the next several weeks, Donald Trump is supposed to sit down with a New York City probation officer who will interview him, something all convicted felons are told to do. The interview is typically, quote, a chance for the defendant to try to make a good impression, explain why he or she deserves a lighter punishment. But Trump will likely have to tell the probation officer he has 3 other active indictments, generally not a thing you want to tell your probation officer. Then, based on the interview and things like Trump's employment, his propensity to reoffend, which, well, the probation officer will write a pre-sentence report with a recommendation in anticipation of the sentencing hearing currently scheduled for July 11th. A prison or jail sentence for felony falsification of business records, which Trump's been convicted of, is not common, we should be clear, for a first-time offender. Citing his own research, lawyer Norm Eisen said, quote, in the most serious of these cases, about 10% of the total incarceration was imposed. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It does happen. Here's just one example. In 2015, a New York construction executive pleaded guilty to just 1 count of falsifying records as part of a bribery scheme. He was sentenced to 1 year of partial imprisonment, spending Monday evenings through Wednesday mornings at Rikers Island Jail, but was free the other 5 days. George Grasso is a retired New York City judge, 30-year veteran in the New York City Police Department. He had a recent op-ed in the New York Times titled, I Supervise New York City Judges. Juan Merchan put on a master class in the Trump trial, and he joins me now. It's good to have you here.
Great to be with you, Judge.
So the normal order of operations here is the person convicted sits down with the probation officer for an interview, right, and that probation officer writes up a memo.
Exactly.
How do they come to their conclusions in that memo with a recommendation, and how important is those recommendations in the sentencing that follows?
Yeah, it's called a pre-sentencing investigation and the report that flows from it. You know, one thing you mentioned when you in the lead up is the indictments he has pending. I really don't think that should factor in at all because he's presumed innocent.
Right.
What could ultimately factor in?
You don't think for for another person just convicted, if you're like, I've got 3 active indictments, you don't think a probation officer takes that into account?
Well, I think he should, frankly, I think he should be presumed innocent.
Right.
Here's where
you think they shouldn't take it into account?
No, I don't.
Right.
Here's where his problem may lie with the other 3 indicted cases. If he's convicted of any one of those cases, now he's got a conviction on this one.
Right.
34 felony counts. So the convictions would certainly and must be taken into account. That especially, you know, in the federal analysis, he's got the January 6th case. Right. He's got the falsified document case. These 34 New York felony counts that he's now stands convicted of could be a ticket to prison on those counts, or certainly a strong factor. What they're going to be looking at here is, does he show a sense of accountability? Does he show a sense of remorse? He's pretty much already answered those questions. I mean, we've all heard his kind of semi-crazed, I'm going to say, in my opinion, semi-crazed public statements out of Trump Tower on Friday, where he continues to unfairly, evidence-free blasting of the judge and the entire system. So we know how that's going to go. But something that I think will and should be looked at very seriously when the probation officer prepares the pre-sentencing report to the judge, which the judge is required to consider, but not necessarily abide by. It's the judge that makes a sentencing decision, is the seriousness of the conviction. And you talked about Norm Eisen's study, and it's not unheard of that people can go to jail in cases like this. But all things being equal, they will also be considering, as they must. Here we have a 77-year-old defendant, no prior record, nonviolent E felony, maximum incarceration time 4 years. That will all weigh and should weigh in favor of the defendant. Defendant Trump in this case, now convicted defendant Trump. Right. However, the seriousness in this case, I think, is rather unique in terms of just how usually these are like, they're falsifying business records to get out of paying some taxes. Mm-hmm. They're skimming money off the top, accountants working together. Inherent in the falsification, the connecting charge here was a violation of New York election law, the essence of which 2 or more individuals engage in a conspiracy in order to obtain the election, prevent someone from being elected, or get someone elected. And in this point, it was get someone elected. Who were the conspirators in this case? Who were the 2 or more? Donald Trump, David Pecker, Michael Cohen. So that election charge, that's the felony bump-up charge.
Right. Like in the case when we talked about the construction guy, it was bribery. It was in furtherance of a bribery.
Right. So that means the unanimous jury found falsification of business records and the violation of New York election law. That's called, the essence, my view of that is that's called corrupting an election.
Yeah.
Corrupting a presidential election. By the way, not corrupting a presidential election where Donald Trump in 2016 beat Hillary Clinton in a landslide. It was a squeaker. I believe roughly Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan with a total of 80,000 votes.
Yeah.
Now, the essence of the conviction is it was to ensure that the Stormy Daniels story wouldn't break in the last 2 weeks of October, right on the heels of the Access Hollywood tape. And by the way, at the same time, Hillary Clinton was getting hit with the Comey investigation, reopening
right.
and then,
so
and
your
then
point
closing
being it's arguably dispositive.
It was a volatile mix.
Right.
But what is clear here, we will never know if Trump won because of that, but we will know that he's convicted of 34 felony counts that, in essence, corrupted the election in New York State, a presidential election. In my judgment, that's about a serious aversion of falsification of business records being bumped up to a felony as I'm aware of.
That's very well said. George Grasso, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.